Beautiful. First off, I appreciate everybody chiming in. I know everybody has a lot on their plate, so a chance for you to carve out some time and spend some time with us. Really excited for the next 55 or so minutes together and what we can uncover and what we can chat about. So, I'll give everybody a little bit of an intro first on the Mentavi side as well as on the Coya side. Really love that this event brought the two communities together, right? So on the Coya side. You might not be super familiar with Mentavi, but Mentavi Health also runs ADHD online, and they're really reimagining mental health care, making it more accessible, evidence-based, and tailored to how each person's brain works. They've helped hundreds of thousands of people across the country get affordable, accurate assessment, diagnosis, and ongoing support for ADHD, depression, anxiety, other mental health challenges. And they're really changing the game for mental health support. It's a fantastic group with fantastic people at the helm, like Michelle. So super grateful to have her here from the Mentavi side. And for the Mentavi folks on the Coya side, we're a health, wellness, and longevity company that provides personalized support of a dietitian, a movement coach, a mental performance coach, sleep coach, etc., all guiding you based on your own biometric data gathered by a best-in-class wearable of your choice. So Coya really takes the biometric data and makes it actionable every single day with simple habits that work for your body and mind. And really, that's how these two worlds and communities come together. And fortunate to be joined by Michelle and Kayleen, and I'll let them do a little bit of intro for themselves. So, Michelle, if you want to get us started.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Nick. Like you said, my name's Michelle Ripper Lewis. I'm a nurse by training and education, but I've spent probably the last 20 to 25 years building programs that engage people in the prevention, identification, and management of chronic health conditions. And most recently joined Mentavi and ADHD Online in 2022. And since then, I've been working on those solutions that you just talked about, hopefully bringing affordable, accessible mental health care to everyone who needs it.
I love it. I love it. And Kayleen, you want to give a little bit of your background?
Yeah, sure. I'm Kayleen. I'm a certified mental performance consultant. So I got my graduate degree in sport and performance psychology specifically. I'm also trained as a licensed professional counselor, so able to navigate along the mental health and mental performance spectrum. With Coya, I work on that performance optimization side, on helping our execs and entrepreneurs find next levels of performance in their own competitive spaces. And so work with a lot of athletes, coaches, and career pros. So happy to be here. Looking forward to this.
That's great. I think that the best place for us to start, we want to get into focus and specifically kind of like that peak focus. And what does that look like and the barriers and some tools, right? I think the main thing we want everybody to leave with is here's a couple things I can actually do later today when I feel this. And so with that being our guiding light, I want to start with a foundation of from each of you. And maybe Michelle, we'll get it started from your perspective. What does peak focus look like? Like how would you define that from your perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Well, I think it's very individual. I think everyone needs to define that for themselves. So start by just asking yourself, what's most important to you about your performance, whether that's a hobby, a recreational activity, or sports, or maybe it's things at work that you enjoy doing and want to excel at. And so just really digging into thinking about and reflecting upon when have I really excelled and what was I doing? What were my behaviors around that? What was my mindset around that time? Because drawing a point of reference for oneself is the very first step to connecting those dots between your thoughts and your outcomes.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Kayleen, from your seat, when you think about peak focus, what does that mean and how would you define that?
Yeah, so I want to provide a very simple definition that is not easy to do, but is very simplified. So focusing on the right things at the right times. And so, even to Michelle's point, you need to know what are the right things and what's the right time. But if you're able to set those intentions or reflect on that to say, okay, like what do I need to be focused on when? Hopefully, that gives you a really simple framework to say, am I focused on the right things at the right times? To then be able to iterate off of that to find what that peak focus looks like for you. But really simple, not easy to do.
Yeah, I love it, and it's not lost on me. First off, that I'm helping to attempt to facilitate this conversation with my own ADHD and focus issues. We'll see if we get to the finish line here today, but gotta buckle up. This thinking about the right thing at the right time sounds great. I'm in.
Yeah.
Back to you on this, Kayleen, though. I think there are so many challenges. Again, I'm hoping to make this for everybody, but I'm just really getting selfish here at the moment. There's a lot of things that get in my way, man. I'm trying my best. I'm trying my best. And so like I want to just pause for a moment of, are there, from either the athletes you've worked with, the individuals you work with, are there common challenges that you see come up a lot, or perhaps like what gets in the way most common that people can see coming and then or in order to prepare for?
Yeah, common barriers, I would say, are like just certainly distractions, and those can be internal distractions or external distractions, and there are only more and more distractions being placed in our hands and put in our faces now. But internal or external distractions, I think about certainly like, chronic stress, nervous system, dysregulation stuff, those are big barriers. But if I were to say like the most common or most important are really the foundational habits that you need to be stepping into and taking care of to take care of your body, which then can help take care of your mind. And that's your sleep, your nutrition, your movement, setting up your environment for success, things that Coya talks about, honestly. Those foundational habits are extremely important to even have, again, like a baseline to excel from.
Yeah, I think that's interesting you say both internal and external, because I know I have found from my own experience is that some situations it might lead more toward one or the other side of those. It's not like I am more of an internally distracted person or externally. It's some situations are more one than the other, and rarely is a situation without either, where it is just entirely one of those. I
Mhm.
think, and Michelle, from your side, yeah, I'm curious kind of what you think from a challenges standpoint, because you see it across the gamut of individuals, right? With so
I
many
do.
thousands of people, right, that Mentavi has worked with. So, are there common threads that you've seen from a challenges perspective?
100%, absolutely. And I think this might be a good time, Nick, and you can redirect if we can talk about it more later, but it might be a really good time to talk about ADHD in general, because attention deficit hyperactive disorder is a disorder. It's diagnosable. It has criteria around it. It's neurodevelopmental in nature. That means that started when the individual was young, like under age 5 or 6, and the way our brains develop and so forth. And as somebody who's been living with ADHD my whole life and not diagnosed until I was, well into my 40s, I can say that my perception of challenges preventing me from peak focus and really peak outcomes, right? Um, was always about distractions and motivation and a lot of self-blame. And the healing that comes from understanding your own mind and really getting to that point of going, okay, this part is the ADHD, it's how my brain is wired, compared to the continuum of distractions and attention and all of the things that sort of characterize ADHD. But all of us experience that on a continuum, whether you have the disorder or not, every day. And so for some folks, it always feels harder than it should because of the way our brains are wired and the way they work, the way the neurotransmitters talk to one another. And and so I think particularly around those challenges, if you're ever asking yourself, is this something that is just the way my brain works, and I need to learn more about that and figure out how to manage those challenges and create specific and individualized strategies for me and my brain? Or is this something that I can work through with some tried and true methods and some tactics that work for just about everybody else? I think one of the biggest things that has helped me understand how to do that is to lean into some people, you hear a lot about the ADHD superpowers. We can go into that in a little bit too, but leaning into your strengths when you begin to identify the challenges might be how you could separate, yes, I have a disorder, but I also am a functioning adult who wants to live a very happy, fulfilling life, right? I'm on a mission for whatever. And you can do both.
Yeah, I think that so resonates with me. And as I say this to everybody that's listening, as questions come up, definitely pop it in the Q&A
Mhm.
site. We'll make sure we get them to the panelists, so that it's not just coming from me. But what you just said really resonates with me because in my own journey through this, I suppose was introduced to the fact that I have ADHD by really thinking school was terrible and everything that happened there was terrible and everything associated with it was terrible and like all of it was not going well. And the fact that I ended up being a teacher at Stanford is like laughable to some people that knew me back in right in the high school and grade school days. That like this is not possible. But I do think that it took me a little while to realize there are certain settings that amplify the things that I feel that I'm good at. And there are certain settings that I'm going to need to take a specific approach to in order to get the best out of I can of that situation. I think that's sort of like almost what you're describing.
That was a great way to paraphrase it. That was really a nice synthesis. And I completely agree. I think we just need to, yeah, know ourselves, understand how our minds are working, and then align that with our goals and what we're dealing with. And remember to be compassionate with yourself because those things are hard. And things that are hard, doing them every single day over and over, and they're still hard, is really defeating sometimes. And that's kind of where the sadness and some of those other negative thoughts come in. And by just being radically accepting of yourself and how your mind works is like a really great step to get you into the mindset of what we're going to talk about in a little bit, which is what are the tactics? What are the habits that I can build to really help me through this, especially when times are hard?
Yeah, and as I think back of my own time of kind of going grappling with that and figuring that out, I think, Kayleen, how fortunate I was that I wasn't under a giant microscope. And so some of the work I know that you've done with professional athletes and, football players in the SEC, et cetera, like sometimes their moment of working through that is in front of a lot of people and a lot of eyeballs.
Mhm.
Which I assume doesn't make it easier or better in that regard, because I'm very grateful that there wasn't a camera following me around in high school. But I think that as you think about that, layering that on top from what you've seen, like how is that throwing that into the mix, kind of like impact focus?
Yeah, talk about stress and nervous system. I think that's where we really go back to you need to practice for peak performance. You need to practice for pressure. You need to practice for stress. Because in all of our roles, we experience higher levels of stress and pressure at times, depending on, what we're stepping into that day or what we're preparing for. So if we're not practicing in those contexts, it's really hard for it to then show up when we are under totally different conditions from those external environments. So those can then serve as internal or external distractions. Certainly internal, if I'm thinking about the pressure and thinking about how big the moment is and thinking about the fact that I'm on TV and thinking about the fact that we're going to watch film on Sunday and I'm going to get totally rocked for what just happened, right? Like all of those can come in to your awareness when really your focus just needs to be on executing the task in the moment and trusting in the preparation that you've put in. And so I think that's something that, like, when I think about some professionals just out in sport right now, like Scotty Scheffler is masterful at being present and in the moment. So many of his interviews, he's just talking about I keep my mind from one swing to the next, from one shot to the next. It does me no good to be frustrated about something that just happened. It does me no good to be projecting forward. He's not doing that mental time travel. So that's something that is a skill for him now that he has practiced. It's not like he just was born this way and he is on a pedestal and somehow better than everyone else. He has worked on the mental skill of attention control to help himself in the moments when he really needs to access that skill. And then he gets to practice it more because he gets to talk about it in the interviews too. So he's just getting more and more reps. But he's, one of the best, I would say, at being in the moment, staying present, and really trying to eliminate as many internal, external distractions as possible.
Yeah, I love it because it's also something that all of us can do, right? For all of us who are in the business setting who aren't going to tee it up at the US Open, like we still have moments where we need to be present, and all it takes is you deciding, hey, I'm going to work on this for the next like 30 minutes. I'm just going to do this one thing I'm working on, and I know other emails are going to pop in, or Slack's going to pop in, or my phone's going to buzz, or whatever the case might be. But I'm going to work on doing this, not only to get this thing done, but to enhance the skill of focusing on doing this so that then I can sort of build on that capacity, right? And it becomes a daily thing, right? There are daily habits that really these things start to build on. And not living your life in the world of sport, Michelle, I'm curious from your side, if I say something like daily habits that fuel peak focus, where does your mind go as far as the things, even for you specifically, and for what you've seen from the work that Mentavi's done? Like,
Sure.
what are those daily habits that, the average person can really take on and start to build, today or tomorrow?
Yeah, it's a great question. And if there are any nurses in the audience, like I feel you completely because Kayleen touched on so many important points. And I think one of them is, as nurses, we're trained to help people when they're sick and we understand all of, the medical approach and how all of that works. And also that healing is a journey, right? And our bodies are always working hard to remain homeostatic and in a state of health. And so, as I was listening to Kayleen talk and thinking about the audience and what kinds of questions they might have, two really important things came up for me. And one was her point about the practice before the moment. And that can happen even if it means, let's say you're really physically impaired for some reason, in a lot of pain, perhaps. And your practice might be just visualizing walking to that mailbox and back. And I'm going to practice it in my mind. And then I'm going to go outside and take a few steps and start doing it. We teach patients this all the time, post-operatively or after surgeries and things like that. And so there's this really powerful experience in her point there, and I wanted to just underscore that for a second. The other thing that came up for me is uh, the um, the challenges of ADHD and like the way our brains work and what's going on underneath all of that, all of the things that Coya talks about in the controllables and the daily habits and those categories of sleep, hydration, nutrition, monitoring your immune system, self-talk and awareness and so mindfulness and so forth, they are all the same things that we do to take care of our mental health clinically anyway. So generally speaking, it's really the foundation of functional medicine, right? Like those are the categories that we want to work on and use to help us remain well. And so again, I agree completely with all that, but then to me personally, when it comes up more like most people with ADHD, I have to check my brain before I start things that are really important. I have to say, oh, wait a minute, Michelle, don't start the conversation inside your head with you're running late, you forgot this little detail, anything that might link me to being concerned about the outcome and to just redirect my focus back to the task at hand. Today's task at hand is showing up at this webinar and hopefully helping 100 people or more with understanding how our minds work and how our behaviors can, help us be well. And so that moment of clarity as I begin to approach something is the moment where I check my thought bags at the door and I say, okay, I'm about to do this thing and I want to achieve this outcome. And right now, I'm going to start to visualize what that looks and feels like and get it going and not beat myself up for trying to beat myself up. I know that sounds silly, but we ruminate, right? That's the brains do these things. I see Kaylee nodding. And so thank you for validating that.
Oh yeah.
But even somebody like myself I feel accomplished. I've worked really hard. I'm working in my passion. That's a great success by anybody's definition. But at the same time, every day work feels hard for me because of the way my brain works. And so you really got to get in there and just, there's no shame in just saying, hey, hold on. You don't have to beat yourself up to be good enough. You deserve to be here.
Yeah, it's so good. I think the acknowledging that The way that everybody's brain is built is so unique to them, and it all is a giant spectrum. There are certain parameters on certain ends of that spectrum that qualify for different things to be called different things. But the reality is, like, all of us have a brain that is just ours, and that is the more that we are knowing how that works, the better that we can continue to put ourselves in position for success, right? And operate how that works. Um, and I think it. Caitlin, you once said something to me that has really stuck with me. That you said, really, attention starts in the body before it gets to the brain. And it's something that has certainly shaped some of the work we do at Coya. But curious if you could sort of like unpack that for everybody that's here of I want to focus. I want to be better. I got a million things going on. Like, how do I best go through my checklist? How do I best get through my day? And as I say that, what you told me once, that look, it starts in your body. Maybe unpack that for everybody else.
Yeah, great. Um, yeah, so I think like we're thinking about bottom up and top down, and we have to start bottom up before we can go top down. And bottom up just means through the body, top down means through the mind. And so, in order to get my mind, my brain in a good space to even sit down and be focused, it starts with the work that I'm doing for my body first. How did I sleep the night before? Did I set myself up for a quality night of sleep? And quantity, right? Of course. But so I'm starting with my sleep. Did I move my body? Movement is such a strong medicine for us, all of us. So did I move my body? Am I hydrated? It's really hard to concentrate when we're not hydrated. If any of us have noticed like that energy dip when we're dehydrated, it's like, wow. And then so often, to Michelle's point, we then point back to us and who we are as a person and the skills or abilities that we have versus like, oh, I didn't drink enough water this morning. Like, duh.
Mhm.
So often it's so much easier for us to be like, gosh, I'm so inattentive. I'm so distractible. I'm so impulsive. I'm so lazy. I'm unmotivated. I just can't. And then that becomes our narrative. That becomes our self-identity. And now we're just like crushing ourselves even further. And it's so easy to get to that connection point that actually there's no link there. And it's really just the habits. It's what we're doing on a day-to-day basis that's helping us or not. So I know I mentioned a couple. I mean, nutrition obviously is huge too. How am I fueling my body in terms of the nutrient density that I'm providing it to be able to be focused? Our brain uses a lot of energy, so we need to give it the energy that it needs to perform well. So those are just a couple that I think about. But when I say from the body, like that's what we're needing first to be able to even set ourselves up to think what and how we need to think for a set period of time, or to get the words out and feel like we're expressive and articulate in the ways that we need to. All of that starts in the body, and then we can be working from the top down next in terms of how we're talking to ourselves and how we're priming and setting our minds up for success, and how we're helping to eliminate distractibility and impulsivity through our habits or through our systems. So, I mean, something that I've thought about a couple times as we've been talking is like maybe a little nugget for everybody. Here's a tangible tool potentially is like do an attention audit or like a little self audit on your attention and think through, or as you go through a day, kind of jot down every once in a while, where's my attention, so that how is your attention being utilized throughout an entire day's worth. I think Rich Roll kind of suggested this on one of his podcasts. Big fan of Rich Roll. Do a little bit of an attention or energy audit, right? Where is my attention being stolen, or where is my energy being drained throughout the day that I'm just spilling things out that actually are not important, where I'm not focused on the right things at the right times. And you'll find that you probably have so many ways that you can tweak your systems to help yourself maintain energy, sustain attention, just through how you're setting your systems up for success throughout the day. I did this similarly with the athletes at Vanderbilt, and we did it more on time. How much time do you have? Because they're always like, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. I don't have time to have a social life. I don't have time to finish my homework. I don't have time to sit down and eat dinner. And then when we looked at it, I'm like, y'all have like 18 hours of time available to you in the week. And how are you using it? And they're like, whoa, 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 we don't have that time, but we all did it together. So doing an audit, you can be really enlightening and informative to know like how you're spending your energy, your attention, your time.
Yeah, as I hear that, I'm curious for everybody listening, and just a quick pause moment almost in the conversation of, we're 20, 30 minutes in here. I'm curious how many times you've been distracted.
Mhm.
I'm curious for all of you that have been here, how many times have you checked your email or checked Slack or has something popped up, right? And we're talking about 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And sometimes it just is something that you're almost unaware of. I know for on the Coya side, we always work with people. Okay, like we have to talk about the phone, right? When is it with you? When is it next to you? How long? And when people put their phone away early before they go to bed, those first couple days, it's amazing to hear back how much they are like feel what they feel, how uncomfortable they feel, like not being around it, and not because they don't. It's difficult to really get a sense of how much it's taking your attention until it's completely removed from the situation, and then you become aware of it, right? And so for all of you, like just take an inventory quickly at the moment, right? I think that how many times were there distraction, and where did those come from? Right. And as you think about, let's say the next 20 minutes in this as a group, can we narrow it down? Can we all raise our hand and sign up together and say, let's do this for the next 20, 30 minutes and see? And that's a great place to start, right? It's a great place to start for all of this. I saw something quick pop in the Q&A. Uh, nice, Raj. I like the call out and the appreciation of that. I did get a question here for if everybody's brain is unique, and maybe I'll start with your take, Michelle. Ways, assessments to start understanding how your brain works. How, you can observe it, but like, what is somebody trying to observe, or what is potentially another way that people can assess, right? What data are we looking
Right.
for?
Yeah, that's a terrific question. Actually, I meant to mention a couple of tactics earlier, and Kayleen just touched on one, and tracking is one. So, tracking is a behavior that we can adopt for anything, for how well you sleep, to what you've eaten, if you're counting calories or looking at, macros or things like that, all the way through how well did I pay attention, or how many, just track my distractions. And I'm a big data person. I love using data for all things. And I've been as simple as making hash marks on a piece of paper just to count the frequency or occurrences of certain things, because that leads to the next way that I can then learn, like, what's the best way to track this? What do I care more about, the time of day or the time during the week or the weekend? Like, just start, right? To like Kayleen was saying, just start tracking, pen and paper, hash marks. Hey, I lost attention, hash mark. At the end of your day, add those up and then think about, and that's just one example, but think about or reflect upon what are the things that kept me from and from blank, right? So the blank is what's most important to you about your attention and focus. What kept me from getting to that are those distractions. And then when you start picking those distractions apart, is it like a notification that you can monitor or manage? Is it your children or your family or a neighbor? I mean, like, who knows, right? Some things we can control, some we can't. But I bet you, if you add up those hash marks, you can kind of start, dialing in with the microscope on what are the things that really need to go away, what things are just fine, and I'll work through them. So that's a great step. Another one is journaling. I really am a huge fan of journaling. It can be as easy as pulling open an empty Word doc or Google Doc and just start typing how you feel in a moment, to just, why do I feel this way? I'm frustrated. I feel like this is too hard. Why am I daunted? Why am I procrastinating? Whatever, right? But if you just start writing, there's something magical that happens between the pen and your muscles and your brain that is different than trying to talk about it or to do something else that's, physical. And so I highly recommend, as a place to start, those two things, just for anybody. But if you want to go a little further, you can always, like, we're going to be talking about our mental wellness snapshot, which is a tool I've been working with our team on at Mentavi to help people have a little bit of an understanding about, kind of where they're at in terms of mental health risk and wellness. So those are available and you can do them, certainly. And if you're not sure, if you really do think maybe I do have a condition and maybe my symptoms are causing me so much distress that they're really keeping me from doing the other things, right? The journaling, the reflecting. My symptoms are getting in the way of doing the day-to-day habits. That might mean you want to talk to somebody.
Yeah, and we will come back to the snapshot. So everybody knows this tool, Mentavi, has been so amazing for our this community and this webinar together. Everybody that's here is going to get access to the Mentavi snapshot and everything that comes with it from a recommendation standpoint, et cetera, for a year for totally for free. So thank you, Michelle, for stuff for the Mentavi
Oh,
group.
of course, yeah.
Amazing. And so the details of that, we'll touch on it in a little bit, and then everybody will get exactly how to do that code, link, all that sort of thing in the follow-up email. But I think that is a great place. That is a great place to start from an assessment of like kind of where am I at, and then I'll know am I improving, am I not. And so yeah, it's super good. I'm really excited to bring that to everybody and have everybody kind of play around with that and give themselves a sense of where they are. Um, Kaylee, Michelle mentioned journaling. Is that something that you've seen work on the elite sport level as well? Is that something that kind of transfers those worlds?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a common thing for us to think that like, oh, these elite athletes are probably like really next level and they're doing all these things or they have all these things that us, common folk we don't have, but that's not the case. Like they're human too. And so often I have to check my own assumptions of even thinking like, oh, they've already got their foundations down. They're doing those things where we'll end up coming back to like, oh, wait, actually like we could really benefit from tracking and starting with self-awareness. We're not at like this high level, cognitive capacity at times where we're doing the exact same stuff. It's just in a different context. So much of what we're talking about today is like, copy paste for some of the conversations that I have with athletes, across the board.
I think those strategies. And journaling is one that I've played with, and maybe I could get some coaching from the two of you on that because it's come up a lot. And I hear commonly, and I experienced myself, like I don't like the start is the hard part. And so, like as I say that, Kayleen, are there specific prompts that you've used that have helped? Is there if somebody's like, okay, I've never done this, but like here I have my pen and my piece of paper out, like after 3 minutes of looking at a blank piece of paper, I'm like, ah, that's not for me, and close it up and just close up shop. Like, how do you get momentum is a tricky thing, right? How do you kind of get the ball rolling? Is there something you've seen or some like kind of like a little bit of a cheat code you could give to people who haven't started that process yet?
Yeah, starting with prompts or frameworks can be really helpful because just free writing can be really daunting. It's like, what do I write about? What do I even say? Is this even helpful? We can get caught up in all that. And then certainly like actually getting to the point where we hit pen to paper is like a whole nother barrier, a whole nother step when we don't even know what we're going to write about. So I like to use a handful of frameworks, certainly like reflective frameworks at the end of the day, where say it's something as simple as like 3 things that went well that day, 1 thing that you want to improve upon, and 2 things that you've learned, 1 about yourself, 1 about your craft. That can be a great, nice and easy, just kind of processing of what happened that day. And we're over indexing on the positives or the things that went well because our brain likes to do the opposite. So we're overriding that. So that's certainly one. I think about a couple others. Maybe it's just like a very factual, like after action review of the day or something that happened that day that you need to reflect upon and review. And it's like, okay, what was the plan? What happened? How do I fill in the gap? Or like what adjustments need to be made between the plan and what happened? And then that one can be really objective for maybe people who are like, I don't really feel it. I don't want to write about my feelings with just like very factual objective. How can I learn from this? And I think that's the goal in journaling or reflecting is you want to take some sort of learning. So even if you do decide like, let me just free write, then look at what you wrote and say like, what can I learn from this? And then that can be where you find the impact from even some free writing. But I think starting with frameworks or prompts can be extremely helpful to at least get the ball rolling, or okay, I'm going to write the same stuff every single day. And now I'm looking for it. I'm going to look more for what went well that day. I'm going to look more for what I want to learn. I'm going to look more for where can I find improvements. And those are ways that our brain can now be operating on more of a peak level of focus because I'm always evolving and iterating on that process. and I'm looking for things that are actually going to be really supportive and helpful for me. So it gives me guardrails too, rather than getting caught up in ruminating. And now I'm thinking about things that aren't even helpful for me to be thinking about or ruminating on. It can give me those guardrails too. So
Yeah,
handful of reasons why I really like journaling.
yeah, that's it's really good. There's it takes me back to there was an athlete I was working with that's Stanford NCAA champion in the 100 breaststroke. And what she used to do is put in her phone a win from every day.
Nice.
Instead in her notes section it just was one win. And what ended up happening was if practice didn't go well or something didn't go well, she was like, I need to win. So she would like have to go out and find something. She was like holding doors for people and like letting people like just trying to go do something to be like all this positive thing. And then when we
Yeah.
would show up to big competitions, it was, man, here's a list of like 100 wins that have happened. Like I'm coming in with so much momentum. Like this
Mhm.
is going to be great. And like how what that can do with just being able, you mentioned like going and looking for the positive when you're training your mind that even just I'm going to write down a couple positive things later. Like,
Mhm.
what am I going to say when that happens? Like, let me just have that in my mind. It's amazing how many things you'll see along the way that fit into that framework.
Yeah, now you might be changing your self-talk, and now you're putting
Right.
deposits into your bank of self-trust. And so you have this whole bank of self-trust you can look back on and say, like, how I've earned confidence in this moment. Look at all of the wins that I have, and they're behavioral. These are things that I've done that I can do again, that now we're just helping ourselves in the moment to feel the confidence that we want to feel too.
I think I'm just going to jump in real quick, Nick. I think
Yeah.
what you just said about that list and how powerful those are, it is journaling, but it's like a sentence, right? It's not a lot. It's just a sentence. And even before you were, before you could get to that point, you could even track how many times have I had a positive thought about myself today? And I betcha, again, compared to your distractions, you're going to see vastly different data. And I did want to bring this back around to what Kayleen's talking about. And that is, and what Nick, you just illustrated, it's moving away from shame and toward data. It's taking judgment and blame out of the story and becoming very fact-based and almost impartial with yourself in some ways so that you can improve your plan, right? Whatever that might be. And I really appreciate so much everything I've learned from Kayleen. I did also want to just totally add the comment that she has the best one-line words of wisdom and advice. Like, thanks. Kayleen was my coach when I went through Coya. And so her one-liners are the things that like I talk a lot about sustained change or enduring change. Can I carry these behaviors forward every day for the rest of my life? That's what I want to do, right? And I hear Kayleen's voice saying things like, if you want to change your mood, get up and go move your body.
Mood follows action. Yeah, good. Oh my gosh, love it. It's awesome.
So
They
good.
all come from somewhere, though. My
Yes,
thoughts are
all
not
good.
mine. They're, the people that have come before me that.
Well, you're a great coach.
Ah, thanks. And I really appreciate you sharing too about like story and the stories we tell ourselves. That's something that I'll throw into that objective review sometimes too, where it's like, what was the plan? What happened? What's the story I'm telling myself? Because
Right.
now I get to learn about, well, what is my mindset? That then can be really clouding this experience. That can maybe be very much rooted in my own judgment rather than any kind of facts. And then that helps me to know, okay, here's what my mindset is right now. How can I start to poke holes in that mindset to
Mhm.
start building a mindset for higher levels of performance? Because if we don't know what our mindset is, we don't know how it's getting in our way. So I think I just wanted to, you reminded me of that part of the reflection process too that I like to use. So that was
Thank
awesome.
you.
Yeah, I think, you know, let's, for me at this point, it is, I'm hearing a lot about starting in your body before you even get to when I want to focus and pay attention to things, right? So starting with how I'm sleeping, eating, moving, etc. And
Yeah.
then post that reflective journal, the prompts you mentioned, Kayleen, I think all those are really tangible things that everybody can take with them today. And I want to come stay in that mode to tangible things, but let's go into the moment. So I am sitting at work, I'm trying to get some things done, whatever that case might be. And I start to lose focus, or I start to that moment happens, right? I'm at that crossroads. Um, what strategies do you both have? And I'll throw it to you first, Kayleen. What strategies do you have like in the moment of things are starting to I'm starting to lose focus and I can tell what do I do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Okay, I'm gonna hijack it for a second and then I'm gonna come back because I do want to go just a little bit before the moment
Okay.
because you need to set yourself up for success. So often we're just not setting our environments up to help us. So even when you prompted the group, like, hey, how many times have you gotten distracted during this call? Like, if I have my Slack open, if I have my phone on my computer, if I have my notifications on, I'm setting myself up for a really hard time at staying focused. So, am I weaponizing those types of things like my calendar, like my notifications, so that I can set myself up for some really quality, deep work, flow type focus? So, I would say start even a little bit earlier before you get into that moment of like, now I'm losing or I'm getting distracted. So, what are my environments like? Am I helping myself to stay focused, maintain the focus for the length of time that I want to or need to? And that starts with the environments and the systems that you have set up to support that. And so then two, like how am I priming my mind for that round of work? Say I have 2 hours blocked where I'm like, I'm trying to get some stuff done during these 2 hours. How am I priming myself mentally for that 2 hour block of like, what am I trying to work on? What do I want to accomplish? What's my intention for these 2 hours? And then even just setting my intention helps me to notice. Again, my brain's going to look for it. It notices, oh, you're not on that intention that you set. You're veering off, and then we're able to catch ourselves and bring ourselves back. Typically, we'll have more skill in doing that when we are mindfulness practicers. So if you practice any kind of mindfulness exercises throughout the day, and this can look so different for everyone, you're going to have more skill in that moment when you notice that your mind is taking you somewhere else, or you're starting to get distracted, or you're getting tired and you're getting off track. So mindfulness, all of those things can really help at the beginning of trying to get into this peak focus state. And then when I think about in terms of like when I start to again kind of like veer off, maybe again I'm that impulsivity, that novelty bias that our brain likes, or just the distractibility that we're all susceptible to. It's gonna start with we have to catch it. Like so often we just don't catch it. So if you can catch yourself sooner and sooner and sooner because you're working on this, now you're reducing the time of distraction. And again, that just comes through practice. Um, and then when I think too, just about or wait, let me just pause and go to Michelle so that like I've rambled a lot. So those are
It's
my
good.
initial thoughts.
And it's working
And we'll
because
just
you're
pause so that
getting,
I don't keep
yeah, this is so great. Like we're really so aligned in the way we think about mental health and overall performance and peak focus, right? So your point about setting up the environment is critical. And if you have ADHD or you suspect that you do, or you really struggle with some of those symptoms that feel like they're not controlled, by anything because it's the way your brain's working, I highly recommend mindfulness, number one. And mindfulness is like a muscle, like Kayleen was saying. Like it feels weird and hard to do at first. And you're like, like, why am I doing this weird, hard thing? And then the more you practice it, the easier it gets. And when the breath work and the mindfulness work together, that actually reduces anxiety substantially. So, the kind of anxiety that can come from performance inhibition or fear, or, negative self-talk or whatever. So please really think about that setting yourself up and managing your environment, especially if you have ADHD, that is a really firm tactic to use for executive function stuff and things like that. The other thing is that with mindfulness, there's this concept that if you are, and I actually learned it from a psychiatrist who has another company that deals with mindfulness. And he said to me he was studying to be a Buddhist monk before he became a psychiatrist. And he said that meditation and mindfulness is so incredibly important. And in that philosophy, that there's really not a clear word for motivation, which means there's not a clear state of mind for a lack of motivation or the overwhelming procrastination that we cycle through when we get when we get there, right? When your mind is doing that. And it really resonated with me. And you mentioned it again, Kayleen, and it's because once you calm that down and you're able to be in that mindful place where you're just present and sort of managing all of your thoughts and, and just being still, that does actually eliminate the sense of saying, I don't feel motivated. That becomes very like almost intangible in a way. Like motivation has nothing left to do with anything. As a matter of fact, now that I'm really mindful and present, I know exactly what I need to do right now to take care of this thing that's important to me. Right. I know I oversimplified and it's much harder to practice and experience, but I want to encourage you all that mindfulness is a muscle and you got to work it and it will work for you over and over again. So thanks for passing the ball back briefly. And I'm glad you brought that up because I think it's huge.
Great.
I want to
Yeah.
double click on one thing, Caitlin, for you first. You
Yeah.
mentioned weaponize your calendar. I think that's what you said. Weaponize your calendar.
Mhm.
What does that mean?
Yeah, it means kind of like taking control of your calendar where you can. I know some of us are in positions where we can have total control of our calendar, some of us not so much, where you're having to, accept meetings that you have to be a part of that you can't just change. But where you can, be setting yourself up for managing your energy across a day's time or across a week so that you're not back to back to back to back and then you're cognitively crushed and now you're trying to get a bunch of work done at the end of the day after maybe you've had a ton of meetings or vice versa where you're not getting any kind of break times. So it's like, how are you time blocking so that you have these good longer periods of time to again get into deep work? Because what happens often is, say, we have someone called it a zebra striped calendar, and I love that concept because it's like we've got all these stripes across in this blank time or seemingly wasted time. When you've got meetings that now maybe have 15 minutes in between or 30 minutes in between, we're not necessarily going to get something done or get into deep work in those periods of time. So we want to make those breaks intentional. So for me specifically, when I have one-on-one meetings, I set them up for 45 minutes so that I have a 15-minute recharge so that I'm not just off one call at 58 and then on another call at the next hour and I've had no transition time, especially when we're virtual. Those can get really exhausting and mentally taxing. And through some research done by Microsoft, we know that our brain waves are very much shifting and changing, and we're not on as high of a cognitive level by the end of three or four back-to-back meetings. So setting up your calendar to help you manage the energy that you need throughout the day, and to set your meetings up in a way that it's going to really be helpful for you to be present in those meetings and to still be productive after those meetings. Again, we're trying to have sustainable productivity. We're not saying like, oh, can you have 10 meetings across a day and then, experience burnout after you do 4 of those days. So I think that's kind of what I'm speaking to on weaponizing your calendar. Have intentional breaks, set up intentional time blocks, so that you can sustain energy.
Yeah. Two things I want to hit on before in the last 10 minutes here, and maybe a little bit quicker on this one. But Michelle, curious how you have seen biometric data and what that says about your mental stamina focus ability as you've been digesting your own biometric data and looking at things like heart rate variability. How have you seen that give you an insight, I guess, into how the capacity you have on a given day?
Yeah, it's a ton of insight. I mean, we're so blessed to have the quality of data and biometric feedback available to us that we have today. And I use my biometric data very much like people use tracking systems, right? So I go, okay, I want to improve my sleep because I know my ADHD and I know, the pressure of my life will all be better if I feel really rested and energized and so forth. So tracking my sleep data is something that's painful for me because I don't sleep well with the ADHD and all the other stuff. And when I went, I got to really focus on this as part of what I was working on with you guys during my Coya time, but just in general in life. I find that the biometric data can go a couple of different ways. If I'm not in that mindset of kind of checking in with myself first and saying, hey, you're doing good things, Michelle. You're getting better sleep. Your HRV is going up. You've got a higher range. You're bouncing back faster. You've got more restorative time, whatever it is, right? Like, if I don't check myself first and say, hey, you gave it your best, like, we're on a track here, and the point isn't this isn't a report card. The point is consistency and enduring change, right? So baby steps, a lot of subtle change over long periods of time. And that data has the ability to really inform me, and it takes shame out of the equation. I mentioned the word shame earlier. It's a word I hate, but it's one we all recognize, right? It's a feeling we all recognize, and nobody really likes it. So, how do you move out of that mindset where you're beating yourself up for not getting there or not doing good enough to a mindset where data has now informed you? And my biometric data, I try to look at that very much like data, but I have to do a mental, like I grab the phone and I go, data, right? Not judgment before before it starts. The other thing it does is it taught me that, and the reason I keep kind of preaching, if you will, that this is about the marathon, not the sprint. It's because I noticed that when I worked really hard at making good changes, I wasn't seeing the impact in the data very quickly. And I got to talking to Kayleen about that and some others, and thought about it a little bit, and I went, you know what? That's okay. It's like if you took your blood pressure twice a day, every day of the week, it would be different all the time. You wouldn't know what your normal is because our blood pressure goes up and down based on the rest of our physical activity and everything else, right? So our doctors say, don't take your blood pressure every day, twice a day. Check it once a week and try to do it at the same time or something like that. So you got to be in a good place to sort of interpret and apply and also step out of it emotionally and into your improvement plans or what you want to change.
Yeah, I love it. It's really like what you do with it that really gives it the power,
Yeah,
right? It's
it
what you
really
do with it
is.
that gives it the power. And I know we have a lot of Coya alumni tuning in, but for those of who haven't, if you want a chance to kind of experience getting coached by somebody like Kayleen, as Michelle did, and getting somebody like Kayleen to come alongside you and look at your biometric data, I'm going to have Jason actually throw in a link to schedule a call just to see if it's the right fit for you and where you're at and where the Coya program is. Michelle, you went through the Coya program. Just 2 seconds on kind of like kind of your take on it, and maybe for the Mentavi community, your thoughts on fit or how that layers in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think your program is amazing because it is comprehensive and it covers, all of the areas of what I started talking about earlier. Is kind of that functional medicine approach, or like, the controllables, as you guys call them, sleep, hydration, nutrition, and so forth, are all foundational to good health, regardless if it's your mental health. I don't even like separating mental and physical health. It is just your health. Our minds and brains are part of our body. I know we tend to you know, like separate them in some instances, but for this, it's very whole person and it's very much something you can do without a diagnosis, without medication. And it's certainly, I'm not saying if you need those things, this is not a replacement for that. If you
Mhm.
need those things, reach out. I can help people if they need to find resources or whatever. Like we can help. But the point is that everything you teach at Koya are the things that we need to know to live our healthiest lives. Whether you're someone coming from a very poor state of health and a lot of challenges, or you're someone like the athletes that Kayleen works with, it doesn't matter. These are foundational and so important. And even I want you guys to know that I don't think you just changed my life, right? You're changing my family's life too. Because as the mom with two teenagers and a husband, and everybody's in different places on their journey, I'm changing my behavior, and that's influencing three other individuals who are going to benefit from this.
I love it. And yeah, appreciate you trusting us with that journey and having you in the community for sure. I think for the Coya alum that are on the call, we're super grateful to be able to have partnered with Mentavi. As I mentioned before, Mentavi, it's giving everybody a 1 year free trial of their mental wellness support snapshot. It is a self-guided check-in that really helps you get a clear idea of what's supporting your focus, what's draining it, where you might need to take action. The clarity it gives you to make a real difference, especially when navigating stress, change, high performance moments, that pretty much is our everyday life, right? For so many people on this call. And I know Jason put that in the chat as well. We'll have it in the follow-up email, but you can go to Mentavi.com, create an account, and use the code Coya Focus for 12 months free. We'll make sure everybody gets that. Kayleen, you have actually taken that snapshot from your perspective. How was that and kind of the value there?
Yeah, it's great. It's a really comprehensive assessment or screener for mental well-being. You end up with a full report to your email immediately after with additional explanation of what the screener, the assessment is asking about and kind of pointing you towards resources, recommendations going forward. It's just a really great way to increase your self-awareness and your ability to kind of self-monitor and see where you're at. And it can help really give a label to the things you're experiencing too, so that you just have a deeper level of understanding of yourself and what's going on in your, mental world. So it's great.
I love it. As we close out, I want to come to another pause moment, and I want everyone to think about how much they were distracted the second half of this after we just made you aware of it versus the first half. Right. And I think it comes back as an opportunity to say, man, when this is something that's top of mind, there are so many of these low-hanging fruit, let's call it, that I can put myself in a better position. Right. And I would be willing to bet that for so many of you, after taking assessment the first half, the second half was a lot less distracting because it just becomes something you're aware of. So a little seed to be planted of small things can ripple and make a really big difference. And we see that across sleep and nutrition and movement, but you also can see it in focus and mindset and how you're attacking the day. Michelle, thank you so much for doing this. Always love getting to chat with you and getting to partner with Mentavi means a lot to Koya. And the work that you're doing in the world is fantastic. In any way that we can amplify it, we want to make sure we do it. So thanks for coming
Yeah,
alongside.
thank you so
Uh,
much.
yeah, Kayleen, appreciate you as always. Your expertise is something that we're so lucky to have on our side, and always willing to share it with everybody. So appreciate you carving out some time as well.
Thanks, Nick.
Have a great day, everybody. Have a good rest of the week, and go focus.
Right. Thank you, guys.
Cheers.